Good morning. Happy day before the primary. Thank you all for being here. I know we're all very busy, particularly in my office, so I'll keep this fairly brief. Tomorrow, registered Democrats and Republicans are eligible to go to the polls across Connecticut to cast a ballot in primaries for U.S. Senate, Congress, General Assembly, some registrars of voters, and some judge of probate positions. I just wanted to take this opportunity to review some of our preparations for the primary, unveil a few new technology features that I think will help our voters, and then I'll take the opportunity to respond to the recently filed lawsuit by the Republican Party regarding ballot order for this November. First of all, as usual, polls will be open 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. tomorrow for registered Democrats and Republicans only. If you're unaffiliated, you still have till noon today to go in person to your registrar of voters office and enroll with a major party if you want to cast a ballot tomorrow. Many of you have been asking me about turnout for the coming primary tomorrow. In 2010, we saw turnout among registered Republicans and Democrats between 25 to 30% statewide, and we expect a similar turnout for the primary this year. Turnout might be higher in the 5th Congressional District or some of the cities where we're seeing more competitive primary campaigns. That's pretty typical. I'm sad to think that only 30% is considered a typical turnout, but be it as it may, it usually turns on how competitive the races are. In the more contested areas or anywhere else, I want to again remind people that if you see any problems when going to cast a ballot, we will have the elections hotline open again to report on any issues. Here is the hotline information. You can dial 1-866-733-2463 if you see anything you're concerned about. 1-866-SEEC-info. You can also email us at elections@ct.gov with any problems. This hotline and the email will be monitored throughout the day by our staff and staff from the Elections Enforcement Commission. We'll be holding several conference calls throughout the day to monitor issues as they come up. One of the issues that might be new this year is the fact that some of the polling locations for the primary may have changed due to redistricting, which happens only once every 10 years, but there are some changes, and frequently we have voters who call us confused about where they're supposed to vote. And that's one of the reasons I'm very excited to unveil a new online Google app that you can easily get on our website. It's an online polling place locator app that Google and Microsoft are helping to launch in coordination with the Voter Information Project. So, we're going to show you how this works. It's a nationwide project sponsored by Pew Charitable Trusts, whose goal is simply to place more information about voting in elections in the hands of the voters. So, we're going to do a little demo here today. You can see this is the Secretary of State's opening website, and that is www.sots.ct.gov. So, there's a big button over here on the right that says Vote. You click that. You enter your address, just your address. So this is an address lookup tool. And voila! It'll tell you where your polling place is and how to get there from where you live. So we're going to use actually the governor's address as a sample. And his address is 990 Prospect Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut, 06105. Then you go search. And with any luck, this will work. And there it is. So the governor will be voting at Hartford Seminary on 77 Sherman Street, and you can get to, and there's directions from his house. So the more information, by the way, you put in, the better. So it's better to put in, just to be absolutely certain, to put in the zip code. So, isn't that great? I think that's really going to be very helpful, particularly this year with the redistricting. And the partnership is benefiting voters right now. It's a real public service, so we're thankful that they've done this project with Pew Charitable Trusts. We encourage you in the media to link it to your websites or embed it, and we encourage voters to go to the website, sots.ct.gov. We also have a voter lookup tool on our website as well. You can put in your name and address and see if you're registered to vote and with the proper party, and if you're, which will tell you if you're eligible to vote in the primary. I don't know if you want to go back to the home page. It's on the home page, and you go to Elections and Voting, and then it's Vote Easy Connecticut, so that'll take you there. Elections and Voting. Yeah, go to Elections and Voting is the easiest way to do it. And then there's a little slow, that's all right. And then it says, where do I vote? Under Elections Information. And that way you can you put in your individual name and address and birth date, and that helps locate you, and you can tell if you're registered and with what party. So, and I also want to make sure, another point that I want to make sure we talk about is that 17-year-olds know that if you're registered to vote as a Democrat or a Republican, you can vote tomorrow so long as you'll turn 18 on or before the general election day, November 6th. This is, of course, due to the constitutional amendment ratified by Connecticut voters in 2008. So that's the basic information about the primary tomorrow. Having reviewed all this, I'm very hopeful that everyone will turn out to vote for the primaries. We have some very hot elections in Connecticut this year. They're being watched nationally, so it's very important. I just wanted to turn quickly to the subject of the Republican Party lawsuit against my office. And I'm referring, for those that don't know, to the case brought last week by the Republican Party, arguing that our determination made last year for the municipal election, that the party of the governor, Daniel Malloy, who received the most votes in the last gubernatorial election, should not be on the top line because he got some of those votes on the Working Family Party line. That's in essence their complaint. I think you've all seen my office's reply to this claim and some of the reasoning we used in interpreting the statutory language. Let me say simply, we're confident that we've consistently interpreted the law and applied it correctly. Our legal conclusion was the party of the governor, in this case the Democratic Party, gets the top ballot line in Connecticut elections. Daniel Malloy received the most votes for governor in the last state election. He is a Democrat, therefore his party is awarded the top ballot line for our elections for the next 4 years. Ballot line placement is not a new issue in Connecticut. Our office has been dealing with it for more than 20 years, well before I was Secretary of the State. Now that the Republican Party has chosen to challenge our designation, we will discuss the matter in court. So I'm not here today to talk about legal arguments. But I do feel it's a regrettable distraction to the real job we have to do, as well as a waste of valuable resources and taxpayer money to go to court over an issue that has dubious, at best, value to the Republican Party. The notion that placement on the ballot is causing harm will be difficult to determine. Time and money will be spent by my office and the Office of the Attorney General defending this lawsuit. My staff is already stretched thin trying to manage this election to ensure orderly and fair elections. Just to let you know the magnitude of the job we do. In the last statewide election, we received over 5,000 phone calls on Election Day. That's just one of the things we do. And that alone is a big job in a time where there are very scarce resources for the state. But even more offensive to me was the implicit idea that our decision was somehow partisan. Yes, I am a Democrat. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. But that's not how I make election administration decisions. We look at the law and interpret the law as professional election administrators. That's our job. To assert that by disagreeing with the hastily drawn and 1 year late claim made by the Republican Party chair that we are politicizing the decisions we make is irresponsible and an insult to the hardworking men and women in the Secretary of State's office. Most of my staff are dedicated civil servants who have worked under Democratic and Republican administrators. I have made every effort to reach out to the Republican Party since taking office. I even stood on this very spot with Chairman Labriola, encouraging Republican voters to come out and vote in their presidential preference primary this spring. I think I've enjoyed reasonably friendly relationships with the Republicans during my time in office, and I'm sorry to see this sort of statement made. I hope as we move forward we can avoid this type of innuendo that makes people lose faith in what is, I believe, a solid election process in our state. Some improvements have been made in the last few years, and I think towns are more prepared this year with emergency plans, a ballot ordering process that helped make it even better, and I was proud to sponsor those improvements. My staff and I will do our best to work with the local election officials to ensure a smooth election and primary day in Connecticut. That is our job. So at this time, I'd be happy to take questions, and thank you for your attention to this very important election season. Thanks. Any questions, anybody?
On voter turnout? Yeah. I mean, what are you just basing that on historical data as far as,
Yeah, basically. Yes, exactly. And 2008 to some degree in the general. But yes, in terms of primary elections, it really depends on the heat of the election. And that seems to be true across the years. But yes.
Do you expect a higher turnout in the 5th congressional district?
Probably. I would anticipate that. On the other hand, you know, there are so many candidates running in that particular race on both sides that may depress turnout. You just can't tell. I'd be, frankly, happy with a 30% turnout.
How is Connecticut's norm these days compare with the national norm? Are we really though any worse off than any other state that's getting 25 to 30%?
We're not in the top range, but don't forget, you know, other states have many different election processes. Ours is quite restrictive, both in the sense of primary elections and in the general. You know, many states now have early voting, they have mail-in voting, they have no-fault absentee ballots, and this really is increasing turnout, particularly in states like Oregon and Washington State. So yeah, we're not on the high end. We're somewhere in the middle.
How many calls do you get to this, this election day number that you put out for, report issues or concerns? You talked about the 5,000 calls you got on election day. I imagine those aren't all to do with something screwy as a poll place.
Oh, no, no. As a matter of fact, that's why we're doing this Google app. We're hoping very much people use it instead of calling our office to say, hey, where do I vote? And that's a big thing, and that's a big part of all the calls we get. And people that are confused about whether they can vote and, you know, whether they're registered. And a lot of them we just funnel to the local election officials who really are in charge of all that. But the hotline is a relatively new invention. In the last few elections we've tried it out. We're trying to get a handle on problems before they occur. And so that's been helpful to work with the Election Enforcement Commission, because most of the time the commission really has to act on a complaint usually. So, but I don't think we've gotten too many calls, honestly. I don't know the exact number. I'm not sure anybody else in the room does, but I think it's a good insurance policy.
Do you have a number, you mentioned people going to the wrong polling place potentially. Do you have a number of how many polling places changed? In other words, the redistricting affected possibly every district, and maybe in minor ways, some in bigger ways. Do you have a number for us of how many polling places changed?
I don't have an exact number. What's striking about Connecticut is how many polling places we have. We did have, before redistricting, 850 odd polling places in Connecticut. Some towns, now the choice of whether or not you want to have fewer or more polling places rests with the town. And I know some towns have taken the opportunity of redistricting to shrink the number of polling places. I think particularly of West Hartford, Enfield, a few other places. I don't have the exact number, but in general, the number has gone down. But more frequently, polling places may change, not necessarily shrink in number. And I can get that number for you, though, if you'd like. I think we're pretty up to date by now. The towns were supposed to report to us exactly where those places were.
Have you told the governor he has a new polling place? That is different from where.
Is it? I didn't know that. We selected him at random. Anybody else?
Is it a challenge, having the primary in the summer when a lot of parents go out of town with their kids because it's getting close to the beginning of the school year, to have that turnout? Is that a factor?
I think it's a factor, although when we looked back at the actual record, this is, I know, becoming sort of legendary in Connecticut. When we looked back, actually, we've had higher turnout in the summer than we did with the September primaries. I remember when I was still in the legislature when we debated all this, and we looked very carefully at that. And actually, that hasn't been borne out. September had other issues. It seems like wherever we put the primary date, there's some sort of problem. So we'll see. I'm going to be watching closely to see how the weather is affecting our turnout.
You raised some objections to the Republican lawsuit, politicizing the decisions that you made. Do you see this as basically just a partisan exercise?
Well, I certainly hope not, because this is very costly to have these lawsuits, particularly in the middle of election season where I really need my staff to be working on elections. But no, I would hope not. The judge will decide whether there's merit to their claim.
Do you think it's politically motivated?
I don't want to comment on anybody's motives. I mean, I'd like to think that it's, certainly well-intentioned. They have a case. They've made their case. We've made our case. The judge will have to decide if it has any merit.
But you just told us that, but even more offensive to me was that the implicit idea that our decision was somehow partisan, that you're not willing to say that what they're doing is partisan.
Well, what I don't like is the fact that they're indicating that my staff is partisan in the decision that they made. Our decision was certainly not partisan. Whether theirs is or not, I guess the judge will have to decide if there's any merit to that claim.
What is the top line worth in your evaluation? I mean, the Democrats for 20 years were on the second line, and they seem to do quite well.
Well, yes, I think they're going to have trouble showing a damage here. But, we all have our stories on top line versus second line. It probably meant more back when we had the lever machines. It's dubious. We remember Senator Lieberman. He was on the third line, and people still found him in 2006. So, and I'm sure you can all think of your own examples either way. So that'll be one of the questions that someone's going to have to look at.
Denise, were you served today, and have any hearings been scheduled or anything? What's next?
My understanding is we were served last week on Friday, I believe, and a hearing has apparently been slated for tomorrow, primary day.
In Hartford Superior Court?
Yes.
Have you been told that this is going to be taken on an expedited basis? That is a rather quick hearing for something scheduled on Friday. Do you expect a result before November? Is this on a fast track?
Oh, yes, it would have to be because of the impact on the election. Although I would make sure everybody understands this really doesn't have an impact on the primary, obviously, because we don't do the ballot for quite a while.
When do you have to print up the ballot? Isn't it,
Yeah, late October. I mean, really, there's a lot of time before we do the ballot. Yeah, it's at least 6 weeks from now. Probably more. It's in October. I don't know. We're still looking at the petition signatures. I believe she did come in with signatures, but now there's a period of time that we have to check to make sure the signatures are valid and to make sure there's the proper number.
Approximately, do you have 2 weeks for that, or what kind of time frame are we talking about on that?
Yeah, I think it's about 2 weeks, right? I don't know the exact date. So the cutoff was last week, and we have a couple of weeks to check the signatures. You have to get them back to the local towns, and the clerks check the registration of all the voters. I believe she had to get 7,500 signatures statewide.
when do you anticipate you'll be able to report on the registration figures? Because obviously people have to noon today, we got to get the numbers to you from
Right.
our office. I was just wondering,
Yeah,
tomorrow or this afternoon?
we should have that. I just had somebody checking on that, and yeah, we just sent it out. So it'll be as up to the minute as we can get it. It obviously won't be right till noon, but pretty close. At this point, I believe we have new registrations since the beginning of the year. As of last week was about 57,000 new registrations. And then 12,000 of those were in this last month. So that says to me that there's obviously interest either in this primary or this election, because 12,000 in 1 month is a big number.
And in round numbers, how many people tomorrow are eligible to vote? You would add Republicans and Democrats together,
Right.
I assume. In
Right.
round numbers, how many people?
Remember, 8, 9, 10, probably 12, 13, 100, I'd rather 100 and, million one, yeah, million one. Too many, not enough zeros. Yeah,
You're figuring
about a
maybe
million.
Give or take 30% of that.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's an estimate.
yeah. We're hoping for that much. Which is a pretty sad statement, honestly. Of course, I'm known to keep reminding people that of all of the eligible voters in this state and in many other states, about a third of them aren't registered at all. So they're already people that no one's talking to because they have already bailed out. And that's... Oh, 100%. I want them all voting, at least registered. I mean, the fact that they're not even registered really is troubling to me. it's just not, we just don't have the same attitude as a society toward voting that I think we did, you know, maybe after World War II, where people thought it was their duty to vote. I just don't sense that same attitude in the next generation.
Think of apathy or just?
I think
or just the system?
it's everything. It's very complicated. I mean, there's been a drumbeat of negativity about politics for a long time, and you know, we're in a down economy. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, probably. Anybody else? Okay, well, thanks very much. See you tomorrow.
Put the AC back on now.
Yeah.